Good evening and welcome to Bowl Game Central. Larry Pulowski here along with my expert commentator, Jeff Caves. Now, he tells you that, but listen, this guy immerses himself in football 15 hours a week on the radio, every Saturday during the season, and now we've got the bowl season upon us. Finally, tomorrow starts in Albuquerque, then we go to Vegas, and we go to Boise, and then we go to somewhere in New Orleans, I guess.
Yeah.
But bowl season is upon us. But big announcements, coaches starting to trickle in to Brian Harsin's staff here at Boise State. Your thoughts on the hires made so far by Coach Harsin?
Well, as we tape the show, Poe, you've got a lot of former players that are coming back to coach, including Coach Harsin. So you've got, as we tape, 5. And looking back at Coach Pete's first staff, and remember Coach Peterson was on Hawk's staff, but he did not play at Boise State, nor had he had coached here previously as an assistant under Hawk. He had 4 former football players on that first staff. So Coach Harsin's not that far off of it. We'll see where he winds up. He could very well end up with 8 guys if he kind of follows the template of some guys that are available. And that would be a little unusual. If there is a downside to that, I'll have to hear what Coach Harsin has to say.
Well, I really like the Marcel Yates pick. I think he's going to do a super job. You know, that defense at Texas A&M, we can't exactly say it was the stoutest defense in the world, but he was a co-coordinator there. He didn't have total control. But I really like the Sanford pick. I think that this guy, he kind of got the same rap as Kellen Moore without the ability, right? While he was here, coach on the sidelines, helped out Zabransky, made sure that the calls got in. Do you think that that is reality, or is that just our perception?
He moved quickly through the coaching ranks. He went, his dad was the coach at UNLV, Poe, so when he was done here, he went there. I think he spent time at Yale, Western Carolina, and then, of course, at Stanford. And he progressed pretty quickly at Stanford. Running backs, wide receivers, quarterbacks, and then recruiting coordinator, which is a big responsibility because that's a national template. So I think he's a guy that can handle a lot on his plate, and he's a little older, actually, than Coach Harsin was when he was given the job by Coach Pete here.
All right. Well, we've pretty much gone through all of the bowl games that are coming up tomorrow, but we do want to touch again on the Hawaii Bowl. Now, this is a weird setup for Boise State. Bob Gregory, the interim coach, probably going to Washington, probably won't be at Boise State.
Right.
How do these kids react to this? And I've heard all about the seniors are getting in there and the seniors are taking over. I don't recall a whole lot of senior leadership this year anyway. Am I wrong in that area?
I don't know that we get a chance to see it much. I'll say that.
Okay.
Because Coach Pete
That's
keeps
fair.
so much under wraps that you don't get to see a lot of that display. You look at 4 losses and blame goes a lot of different ways. This team now has a chance to kind of practice what they've been preached, and that is what's going to sustain you, what lessons have you learned that will carry you the rest of your life. You and I played. There's stuff we learned when we played that we still remember, that still influences us, and so these kids now have a chance to practice that. It will be different. They are creatures of habit. This will be a different game for Boise State. I don't like this game for them today. Tuesday.
Sure. Yeah, Tuesday, Christmas Eve.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Interesting game time anyway, but you know, Mannion, the quarterback, just has been stellar. A lot of yards, a lot of sacks, a few interceptions. But the thing that you look at, they've lost 5 games in a row, but 4 of those games are the top 25 teams.
Right, and they've struggled running the ball, Poe. They're not running the ball well. They get Cummings back, who's got 23 catches, but 13 of those catches, Poe, for touchdowns or first downs. So he had a wrist injury. He's coming back. Derek Thomas won't make the trip for Boise State.
Disciplinary.
Yeah, so he's not going to make it, but he really wasn't getting that many reps anyway. So they'll rotate those quarterbacks in some fashion. We don't know how Hedrick and Southwick will be handled during the game. This will be somewhat of a mystery. And how they react to Coach Prince and his status is another mystery, too.
All right, very good. Well, we'll be back with a little chatter on the Pinstripe Bowl and the Russell Athletic Bowl right here on Bowl Game Central on 12 KTRV.
12 KTRV's Bowl Game Central is brought to you by Domino's Pizza, always fresh, never frozen. Cheerleaders Sports Grill in Boise, off Capitol Boulevard, at the entrance to Ann Morrison Park. Happy Camper, the biggest little trailer dealer in Idaho. Leisure Time, come see us at Leisure Time. You'll be glad you did. And by Napa Appliance, for the best selection, service, and value. Come to the source, Brand Source.
Welcome back to Bowl Game Central. Time now to turn our attention to the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame in the New Era Pinstripe Bowl in New York City against the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. An interesting game for Notre Dame.
Yeah.
In fact, in New York City, they stay on the East Coast. They're in the big media market. They like that East Coast exposure, and they passed up an opportunity out west, didn't they?
Yeah, I think you pretty much described it. I think that's their comfort zone. The commute is okay. They like the bigger media market. They probably thought the matchup was winnable. They've got a lot of issues, which we'll talk about. Hawaii presented an opportunity for them. They could have possibly been matched up with Boise State. Poinsettia, in talking to Binkowski there, I think he was committed to the MAC as his backup plan, and that's pretty much the way he had to go. So he did not really feel he could get Notre Dame involved.
All right, well, let's get into the game time issues. Tommy Rees, the quarterback for Notre Dame, had a pretty solid year, 3,000-yard passer, but boy, the rushing game for Notre Dame, Jeff, is not there.
Well, and I don't know how much better it's going to get, Poe, because they've got injuries not only on the defensive line with great players out, but Notre Dame's got injuries on the offensive line too. They're also without an offensive coordinator, and they're also without a defensive coordinator. I mean, they're really a mess, and I think they're fortunate in who they're playing here. Rutgers is getting somebody back to run the ball that was out, this Paul James. I remember early in the season, he was like number 3 in the country in running. He's coming back. So I think it'll be a lower scoring game. I think Rutgers has a chance to keep it closer here, and we'll talk later about who's going to win.
All right, well, Rutgers, as a 6-6 team, 3-5 in conference, barely got bowl eligible, but it'll be an interesting test versus Notre Dame. The Russell Athletic Bowl, Miami, Louisville. Two interesting programs. Louisville, a lot of talk at the start of the year on how good they were going to be. Heck of a quarterback in Bridgewater. Miami, again, started off very well, highly ranked, did a lot of things that were good, and they were up in the rankings, and then they lost a few games. So when you look at this ball game, Louisville has only lost one game, but they play in the American Conference. So your thoughts on which way this is going to go?
Well, I think, first of all, you have a very motivated Louisville team. Bridgewater is from near this area of Orlando. He was a commit to Miami out of college. Randy Shannon was the coach, got fired. He decommitted and ends up at Louisville. There's 23 Miami area kids on this Louisville team. So them playing against the University of Miami, showing them, you should have took me, I think gives them a lot of motivation. Bridgewater was an early Heisman guy. He's not now. They have a great defense. I think they're 3rd in the country in yards allowed, or 2nd defense in yards allowed and run defense. So they got a lot going for them. And Miami, I think, is kind of limping in. They lost their top running back to an injury. So it's all stacking up to be, I think, one of the more entertaining games because I know there'll be emotions on that field.
Well, I like Bridgewater in the fact that he's got a 169 pass efficiency rating. That's one of the highest in the country. But I look at what Miami's done and who they've lost to, and you really break this down. They've lost to Florida State, which is number 1, and Duke, the 24th team in the country, and Va Tech, which, hey, on some days they play pretty well.
Yeah.
That's a pretty solid effort by Miami.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Miami can play well. I mean, without their top running back, maybe a little bit more difficult. But I look at Louisville and say they've got perhaps the best quarterback in the country, and they should be able to torch Miami. I think Bridgewater is that good. Now, I don't know what their timing will be like. All these teams are going to be subject to turnovers and timing issues because of all this time off. You get rusty, and I don't think you play as effectively. And Louisville definitely, with their passing games, a little more rhythm-oriented. But as we'll see later, I think I still like the Cards.
All right. Well, Bridgewater getting a lot of play for a high draft pick. Will he be one of the top 5 quarterbacks? You would certainly think so
if not number
draft.
1.
In this draft.
If not the top guy.
This draft is really fair. I'm not going to say fairly weak, but there's some unproven commodities that are going to be in this draft. Bridgewater, though, I think is the real deal.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Time now to give your local Domino's a call. It's getting to be dinner time. Look up their number. Give them a buzz. They've got all kinds of specials. You'll find something you like. It's always fresh, never frozen. Domino's. When we come back, more on Bowl Game Central. Welcome back to Bowl Game Central. Larry Pulaski, Jeff Caves here with you. The Hyundai Sun Bowl is on tap right now. We're talking about Virginia Tech and UCLA. And UCLA with the coach just got himself a nice little contract extension.
Yep.
You know, when people come suiting you, it's amazing how those contract extensions follow, isn't it?
Yeah, Coach Moore cashed in there. It was nice to see UCLA step up, too.
Sure.
In the past, they'd let guys go because they didn't want to step up, but not in this case.
Well, I look at Virginia Tech. Tough situation with these guys. They are rushing 110th team in the country. Now, how can that be for a Virginia Tech team? 110th in the country. Their leading rusher has 675 yards on the ground.
They've got a lot of injuries. Looking at Virginia Tech's defense, Poe, they've got injuries all over the place. And Hundley is really one of the better quarterbacks in college football.
Sure.
Whether he goes to the NFL or not. And I think one of the challenges Virginia Tech defense is going to have, if it isn't injuries, they have played well, but they have not played well against mobile quarterbacks. So they've got to cut Hundley from running outside, which he will. He's taken off several touchdowns on the ground. He's a very dangerous guy. And I think they're very vulnerable right now to just this kind of quarterback. So it'll be a very difficult matchup for the Hokies.
Well, if you look at the losses, too, as far as UCLA goes, I mean, this is really a mismatch on paper. UCLA has lost to Stanford, Oregon, and Arizona State, all ranked teams. The Pac-12 kind of stacked this year. This really just seems to be quite a mismatch, but they still have to play the game.
Well, yeah, I mean, this has happened a lot this bowl season, I think. I look a lot of games where they matched them up and said, these are our best opponents, and ESPN's got their hands all over a lot of this and some big point spreads. That doesn't tell me they're competitive games.
All right, the Fight Hunger Bowl features BYU and the University of Washington. One team going through a lot of turmoil. They've got a new coach in Chris Peterson, but he's not going to be at the game. Interim coach there. Bronco Mendenhall for BYU always seems to get his teams motivated and ready to roll. I like BYU in this game big time.
That should be an offensive shootout. You know, BYU can both run it and pass it. I like the power running game from Washington. Sankey is a force. So is BYU's front seven, though. So that's a key matchup for anybody to watch that game, is if Washington can run the ball with Sankey, and can BYU withstand that? Can they get them into third and longs and then force them into throwing the football and try to tee off and get some heat on Price from Washington?
Well, and Sankey's got almost 1,800 yards rushing this year. I think he got a lot of those against Boise State. But still a pretty good number that he's put up there. And then you look at BYU. They're a rushing team too, and number 10 in the country right now. Taysom Hill has kind of had an odd season, started off bad, got really good, and now it's just kind of mediocre. But he's going to be a guy to propel that team.
Yeah, I think one of the things probably with him is the quality of competition. You know, who has he played against? And how motivated will Washington be? Their coach is gone. There's a new coach there. I just don't like these situations. These orphan bowls, I think, are bad for the sport. It shows that it's not important. The coaches just have left. It's so important the coaches don't even want to go. Don't even want to coach their teams. That's not a good situation.
And then you've got the whole recruiting issue with those orphan teams, and coaches can't recruit this and they can't recruit that. And we're in the dead period now anyway, so it's a little less of a point. But I think when you look at BYU, they lost to Notre Dame, they lost to Wisconsin, 2 of their last 4, both by 10 points. So they have been right in the middle of virtually every game that they've played, and they've had some losses that I'm sure they really look back and say, wow, we let that one slip.
We were right there. We were right there. Mistakes, turnovers, missed opportunities, injuries, all of it started caving in. A very difficult schedule for BYU. This independence thing, be interesting to see how long they take to reanalyze this.
Not all it's cracked up to be sometimes. All right, that wraps up our Fight Hunger Bowl coverage. When we come back, more on Bowl Game Central right here on 12 KTRV. Welcome back to Bowl Game Central. Let's look at another game of teams that had aspirations for greatness at the start of the year and then are relegated. And I say relegated, but the Alamo Bowl's a nice bowl game. But still, Oregon never thought they'd be there at the start of this year. And Mack Brown, this will be his final game if he actually ends up coaching this game, which I hear he's supposed to. So we'll see about that. But this matchup is intriguing on paper, but is it so intriguing now?
You know, I look at the matchup and think, like everybody else does, who's going to stop Oregon's run game? You know, and so somebody stand up and tell me who's going to do that. And when I look at Texas's defense and think, well, BYU ran all over them and got their coach fired after the game. So I look at the injuries of Texas defense, the emotional situation with Mack Brown. I don't know quite how to factor that in. A fabulous defensive lineman in Jeffcoat. But it all starts with how will you stop Oregon's run game? And until you get that figured out, it's like what we'll talk about in the national championship game. You don't have it figured out. You got to stop the run.
Well, when you look at Oregon also, Marcus Mariota, a guy that decides he's going to come back next year, not going to go into the NFL draft. But is he healthy? It's been a question, really ever since he got hurt. Is he healthy? Here's a guy that's got 30 touchdowns, 4 picks, almost a 170 pass efficiency rating. This guy does it all. He's mobile. He can run. They've got DeMarcus, the Thomas kid, that just is one of those guys that rolls, that can pick up yardage at will. You're right. Who can stop him? But are they in that hangover mode too? We talk about that so many times. They lost 2 games. They were talking about, we don't even want to go to the Rose Bowl. It was national championship or bust. Now they're in the Alamo Bowl.
Right, and I think Coach Helfrich has his work cut out for him.
He does.
I think he's got his work cut out for him. We're going to learn a lot about how Coach Helfrich takes care of a team, what kind of a coach he is, how that all works together, because you're going to find out a lot more about them now. And at the end of the day, I think you're right. Mariota better be healthy. And Texas, though, is not. Brown's on the record. They've lost 8 of their 10 best players to injury. Yeah. So they are a world of hurt. It's the emotional factor of Mac Brown. How will they react? They got up and beat Oklahoma. Can they get up and beat Oregon?
All right. Well, let's go to the Holiday Bowl. Arizona State takes on the Texas Tech Red Raiders down in San Diego. On paper, Arizona State should just mop the floor with Texas Tech, but it never seems to work out that way. And the Holiday Bowl is a game played in a beautiful city, great environment. The Sun Devils with Taylor Kelly, 3,500 yards for this kid, 28 TDs, 11 picks. He's had a really nice year.
Yeah, they are a potent offense, to say the least. And Texas Tech's defense has given up. The last time they gave up 30 points or less was the 3rd week of the season. Well, so they've had a steady diet of collapses and giving up a lot of points. The Holiday Bowl is known as a shootout game. For whatever reason through the years, I like Arizona State's chances in that kind of game.
But Texas Tech putting up 390 yards per game. All right, when we come back, it's time for picks. We'll see who is going to win and who's going to lose, at least according to us 2 knuckleheads, right here on Bowl Game Central. Welcome back to Bowl Game Central, brought to you by your local Domino's Pizza location. Always fresh, never frozen. All right, time for some picks of the week. Jeff, let's jump right in to the bowl season, and let's make some picks first out of the chute over in Hawaii.
Yeah, well, Boise State without leadership, with all kinds of turmoil and a great passing team, hard for me to say they're going to come out and win this game. So I would take Oregon State at this point.
No running game and a quarterback that could shred Boise State's defense, but I'm going to say these guys pick it up and they at least cover the deal. It's only 3 points. I think Boise State wins. All right, let's move on to the Pinstripe Bowl. The Gold Domers of Notre Dame and Rutgers Scarlet Knights.
Yeah, even though Rutgers has a running back, Notre Dame's got injuries and coordinators gone. It'll be a lower scoring game, but I think they'll grind it out because I just don't think Rutgers is that good.
Yeah, and I'm going to have to go with Notre Dame too. I just think that they've got a setup and a history, and they'll pull out of this game. All right, moving on to the Russell Athletic Bowl, the U and the Lou.
I like Louisville. I like all the intrigue of the kids from that area that didn't get a chance to go to Miami, and Bridgewater at the end. Lack of a great running back in Miami as well.
Yeah, and you said Bridgewater, and that's what I'm going to take Louisville for. I think this kid's got a lot of talent, and I just think Miami towards the end of the year has gone the wrong way. And in this kind of a game, you need to be going the other way. Sun Bowl in El Paso, Texas.
The injuries on Virginia Tech's defense will hurt them, and Hundley's the man to get it done.
All right, well, I like UCLA for a lot of different reasons, but I think they're just more of a balanced team. But watch Va-Tech. You never know when Beamer's going to get these guys up and running. I'll be hard-pressed to pick against UCLA, though. And the Hunger Bowl, Fight Hunger Bowl in San Francisco, the Y and the W. Man, interesting situation for these Huskies.
Yeah, if Washington can run the ball, I think they can win the game fairly decisively. If they don't run the football, I don't think they'll win. But I have a feeling they will, so I like Washington.
You like Washington here. Well, I kind of like the Y, and I only like it because of the turmoil factor. The turmoil factor, the Orphan Bowl, as Jeff called it earlier, one of those situations that I think BYU and Bronco Mendenhall will be able to overcome. Now, this next game, to me, is really interesting. Which team shows up for both sides?
13-point game. Here's another great matchup. Mac Brown makes it intriguing. Oregon's run game takes care of it. Texas defense, too many injuries. I'll take the Ducks.
13 points. I mean, that seems to me to be way too many points. I'm going to have to go with you on this, Jeff.
Yep.
I agree. The Mac Brown issue is going to drive these guys over the top. They're going to want to send him out on a winning note. And our last game here, the Holiday Bowl. I like Arizona State. I don't know that much about Texas Tech to make a pick, but on paper, it's a crazy game.
If they're giving up 400 points, 400 yards, then it's easy for me to say Arizona State should win this football game. They're more familiar with the West Coast. I think their offense is on fire, and they want to be there, and they want to win, and Tech's not playing good defense.
All right, well, I'm going to go with the Sun Devils, too. I think they've just got too much offense and a decent enough defense. Plus, they went 8-1 in the Pac-12, which was pretty good this year. Well, hey, thanks again for joining us here on Bowl Game Central. We'll be back next week to take on the Big Boy Bulls. And as always, Jeff, I appreciate your efforts here. You can watch or hear Jeff every day, 93.1 FM The Ticket on Idaho Sports Talk.
That's right, 3 to 6. Check us out weekdays.
And also, this Tuesday, pregame show for the Sheridan Hawaii Bowl on 670 KBOI starts.
1 o'clock.
Starts at 1 o'clock here. All right, for Jeff Caves, I'm Larry Pulowski. Thanks for watching Bowl Game Central.
12 KTRV's Bowl Game Central is brought to you by Domino's Pizza, always fresh, never frozen. Cheerleaders Sports Grill in Boise, off Capitol Boulevard at the entrance to Ann Morrison Park. Happy Camper, the biggest little trailer dealer in Idaho. Leisure Time. Come see us at Leisure Time. You'll be glad you did. Also by Nampa TV and Appliance. For the best selection, service, and value, come to the source. Brand Source.